I was starving because of my stepdad's extreme diet rules, but I finally stood up for myself, and you won't believe what happened next. I'm Aaron, 16, and I've been living with my mom, Margaret, 42, and my stepdad, George, 45, for the past 3 years. Things weren't always this complicated. When I was younger, it was just me and my mum. My dad left before I was born, and mum never talked about him. We got by okay. Mum worked long hours as a nurse, but always made sure I had what I needed. I remember how excited Mum was when she started dating George. She'd come home from their dates with a big smile on her face, happier than I'd seen her in years. George seemed nice enough at first. He'd come over for dinner, bring me cool gadgets from the electronics store he managed, and take us out for pizza on weekends. But after George moved in and they got married, things changed. He was stricter than Mom about bedtimes and chores, but it wasn't anything too extreme. The real issues began about a year ago when George decided to get healthy. George had always been a big guy, not huge, but definitely carrying extra weight. Last winter, he had a health scare, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, basically a wake-up call. His doctor warned him he needed to make some lifestyle changes. That's when George went overboard. He dove headfirst into every fad diet and health trend he could find online. First it was keto, then paleo, then raw vegan. He'd spend hours watching YouTube videos about clean eating and detoxing, constantly pushing some new superfood or supplement he swore would change everything. At first, I didn't think much of it. Adults are weird about diets, right? But then George started imposing his new habits on me and Mom. He threw out all our processed foods and took over grocery shopping and cooking. Suddenly, our meals consisted of tiny portions of grilled chicken or fish with steamed veggies. No pasta, no bread, no rice, and barely any seasoning. George got rid of anything with sugar or carbs, calling them poison. Now, I'm a pretty active kid. I've played soccer since I was 5, and this year I made the varsity basketball team. Between practices and games, I was getting hungrier and hungrier. As a growing teenager always hungry from my activities, the small portions George was preparing just weren't enough. I tried explaining to both George and my mum that I needed more food, especially carbs, to keep up with my busy schedule. George, however, lectured me about how carbs and sugar are addictive and insisted that I should train my body to rely on vegetables and lean protein. My mum mostly went along with George, not wanting to cause conflict. Things worsened when George became more extreme, banning any food he didn't approve of from the house. When he found a granola bar I had gotten from a friend, he completely lost it, making me empty my backpack and locker, convinced I was smuggling in junk food. I started feeling constantly tired and irritable, and my performance in sports began to suffer. I couldn't keep up during practices and games as I used to, and my coaches noticed. When they asked if everything was okay at home, I was too embarrassed to explain, and just made excuses about not sleeping well. The situation reached a breaking point last week before an important soccer tournament with college scouts attending. I knew I needed to carb load to perform my best, so I asked George if we could have pasta or potatoes for dinner the night before the tournament. George erupted, ranting about my carb addiction and accusing me of trying to sabotage his health journey. He said I was ungrateful for the healthy food he provided and insisted that if I wanted junk food, I would have to buy and cook it myself. Frustrated, I asked my mum to take me grocery shopping for some normal food, but she hesitated, clearly reluctant to oppose George. When I pressed her, saying she was allowing George to starve me, it only led to more yelling. In the end, no one took me shopping, and desperate for energy, I decided to sneak out and get the food I needed on my own. Late at night, I sneaked into the kitchen and ate a lot of peanut butter straight from the jar. It was the only calorie-dense food left that George hadn't thrown out. The next day, at the tournament, I felt weak and dizzy, barely able to keep up with the other players. We lost badly, and I knew my poor performance was partly due to being low on energy. Afterward, one of the college scouts asked if I was okay, noting that I seemed off my game. I was so embarrassed I nearly cried. When we got home, George had the nerve to lecture me about my poor performance, claiming it proved I needed to fully commit to his diet plan. I couldn't take it anymore and yelled at him, blaming his diet for my poor play. This led to a massive argument, with my mom trying but failing to mediate. I'm at my breaking point. I've tried talking to my mom privately, but she just tells me to go along with what George wants for family harmony. I feel like I'm being deprived of basic nutrition. George keeps saying I'll thank him later when I'm healthier as an adult, but I'm concerned about my current health. We live in a rural area with no public transportation or nearby stores, and I don't have my own money for groceries. I'm also worried that talking to someone at school could lead to more problems at home. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to eat George's health food and demanding regular meals suitable for an active teenager. Should I just accept the diet or push back against it? I live in a fairly rural area with no public transportation and no stores within walking distance, so buying food is a challenge. Update. Wow, I wasn't expecting this post to get so much attention. Thank you all for the advice and support. A lot has happened in the past week, so here's an update. After reading your comments, I realized I needed to take more drastic action. The next day after school, I visited my guidance counselor, Mr. Roberts. I've always liked Mr. Roberts. He's a relaxed older guy who actually listens to students instead of just lecturing them. Nervous but determined, I shared everything about the food situation at home with him. Mr. Roberts was genuinely concerned and asked many questions about how long this had been going on and how it was affecting me. When I told him about the soccer tournament issue, his expression turned serious, and he asked if he could arrange a meeting with my mom. I was anxious about her reaction, but agreed. The meeting took place 2 days later. My mom, Mr. Roberts, and I sat down in his office after school. Initially, my mom downplayed the situation, suggesting that George was just health conscious and that I was exaggerating. However, Mr. Roberts was exceptional. He explained the dangers of such a restrictive diet for a growing athlete and even showed my mom some nutrition guidelines. I saw my mom begin to understand the severity of the situation. She became quiet and then started to cry. She admitted that she knew things had gotten out of control but felt trapped between my needs and George's health goals. She also shared her struggles with her own weight and her fear of undermining George's goals. It was the first time she had opened up like that. Mr. Roberts was compassionate but firm. He suggested family counseling and emphasized that immediate changes to my diet were necessary. He also offered to help my mom find a nutritionist to develop a balanced meal plan for the whole family. My mom agreed to go grocery shopping with me the following day after school. It felt surreal to be allowed to shop for food. To put regular food back in the cart, we bought a lot of whole grain bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and other healthy carbs. We also picked up peanut butter, cheese, and other calorie-dense foods for me to snack on. I kept hoping my mum would change her mind, but she seemed resolute. When we got home, George reacted exactly as I expected. He started shouting about how we were poisoning our bodies and undoing all our progress. He accused my mum of not supporting him and said we were trying to make him fat again. Things got pretty heated, but something had shifted in my mom. Maybe it was her conversation with Mr. Roberts, or perhaps she had reached her own breaking point. Whatever it was, she stood firm. She told George that while she respected his health journey, he had gone too far, and it was negatively affecting me. She said that from now on, there would be regular food options at every meal for me, and George could eat whatever he wanted. George didn't take it well. He sulked for days and made snide comments every time I ate something he disapproved of. He would dramatically leave the room if I had pasta or roll his eyes when Mum made sandwiches for lunch. But Mum didn't back down. She started cooking separate meals, one for George and one for me and her. The change in how I felt was almost immediate. I finally felt full and energized again. I stopped feeling dizzy during practices and could actually focus in class. My mood improved as well. I hadn't realized how irritable constant hunger had made me. The real test came that weekend with another soccer tournament. This time, I was properly fueled. The difference was night and day. I had plenty of energy, my head was clear, and I played some of the best games of my life. We made it to the finals, and I even scored the winning goal. My mum came to watch, and I could see her tearing up from the sidelines. After the game, she hugged me tightly and kept saying how proud she was. On the drive home, she apologized again for letting things get so bad, and we had a long talk about everything, her relationship with George and more. I've been grappling with my own food and body image issues, and we had a difficult but necessary conversation as a family. It felt like the first honest discussion we'd had in a long time, even though it was tough. Things are still strained at home. George barely speaks to me and is cold towards my mom. He continues to make separate meals and avoid eating with us. I realize this isn't resolved yet. George clearly has significant food issues to address, and I'm concerned about the impact on my mum's marriage. On the positive side, I'm getting the nutrition I need, sleeping better, and performing well in school and sports. I feel more like myself again. I'm grateful for the support I received. Speaking up and seeking help made a big difference. It's been about a month since my last update, and unfortunately, things have worsened at home. Initially, George seemed to begrudgingly accept the new food situation, making faces but keeping quiet. My mum stuck to her decision about separate meals, and I continued to feel great. More energy, improved performance, and even a growth spurt. However, the atmosphere at home became increasingly tense. George and my mum barely spoke, slept in separate rooms, and George spent most of his time either at work or locked away in the home office watching health videos. The situation escalated last week when I came home to find George and my mum in a heated argument. George had discovered text messages between my mum and Mr. Roberts regarding family counseling and resources for dealing with disordered eating. He was enraged, accusing my mum of betraying him, trying to fatten him up again, and choosing me over him. He dredged up old grievances I hadn't even heard about and demanded that if we wouldn't adopt his lifestyle, we should leave. My mum tried to de-escalate the situation, explaining she was just trying to find a way for our family to be healthy together, but George wasn't having it. He got increasingly agitated, accusing us of sabotaging his hard work and progress. Eventually, George stormed out, sped off in his car, and we didn't hear from him for 2 days. Those 2 days were awful. My mum was a wreck, crying, barely sleeping, and constantly checking her phone. I felt terrible, even though I knew it wasn't really my fault. I couldn't shake the guilt for all the drama. I tried to comfort my mum, but I didn't know what to say. We ordered pizza one night and sat on the couch, watching old movies like we used to before George came into our lives. It was comforting, but a heavy sadness loomed over everything. When George came back on Sunday night, he was calm but distant. He told my mum he'd been thinking things over and had decided to give us an ultimatum. Either we follow his diet plan 100%, or he wants a divorce. He said he refused to live in a house full of toxins and temptation. My mum was devastated. They've only been married for 4 years, but I know she truly loves him. She begged him to reconsider, to try counseling, anything, but he remained firm. He felt he had given us a chance to see the light, and we'd rejected it, so now he had to protect his own health and well-being. Now my mum is torn, constantly crying and struggling to decide what to do. Part of me wants to tell her to give in to George to save her marriage, though I hate seeing her so upset. Another part of me is furious at him for putting her in this position and worried about returning to the old days of being hungry, tired, and miserable. I don't know what will happen. My mum has been talking to her sister a lot about possibly staying with her to figure things out. I'm scared and stressed, unsure how to help. I just want things to go back to normal. I don't even know what normal is anymore. This whole situation has made me reflect a lot on family and what it means. Before George, it was just Mom and me against the world, and we were happy even if things weren't perfect. Now I feel like I'm competing with George for Mom's attention and loyalty, and it's a horrible feeling. I'll update again when I know more. Thanks for listening, Reddit. It helps to have a place to share all this. I'm relieved to say things have improved. After George's ultimatum, Mum was a mess for a few days, but then something shifted. She sat me down and apologized for letting things get so out of hand. She admitted she had been prioritizing her marriage over my well-being, which wasn't right. She opened up about her struggles with self-esteem and her fear of not being enough for her partners. It was eye-opening to hear her so vulnerable. Mum called her sister, Aunt Carla, and explained everything. Aunt Carla was furious about what had been going on and immediately offered us a place to stay while we sorted things out. Aunt Carla has always been the cool one. She's single, travels a lot for her job as a photographer, and has an awesome apartment in the city. So last weekend, while George was at a wellness retreat, Mum and I packed up and moved to Aunt Carla's place a few towns over. Mum left George a letter saying she couldn't accept his ultimatum and needed space to reassess their relationship. Living with Aunt Carla has been amazing. Her place isn't huge, but it's so much more relaxed than our old house. There's no tension, no one policing what anyone eats. Aunt Carla has been incredibly supportive, listening to Mom and helping her find a good therapist. Plus, Aunt Carla loves to cook and has been teaching me how to make all kinds of dishes. Homemade pizza, lasagna, stir-fries. Everything is balanced and delicious. I forgot how much joy there could be in simple things. In food, when it's not treated as the enemy, things are different. George has been bombarding my mom with calls and texts. Initially, he was angry, calling us weak-willed for not following his plan, accusing my mom of kidnapping me and threatening to involve the police. Aunt Carla helped my mom document everything and even consulted a lawyer friend as a precaution. Over time, George's tone has changed. Now he's begging my mum to return, promising to see a therapist and work on his issues. Part of me hopes he means it, but I'm also worried about returning to how things were. My mum is firm, though. She told George that if he wants any chance of saving their marriage, he needs to seek professional help for his disordered eating and controlling behavior. She said she won't even consider moving back until he's been in therapy for several months and shows genuine change. As for me, I'm doing well. I've regained some weight and have much more energy. My new school is larger than my old one, with more sports options. I've joined the soccer team and the coach is impressed with my skills. I'm even thinking about trying out for the swim team in the spring. But the best part is how much closer I've become with my mom. We now talk more openly about real issues, and she's shared more about her life before I was born, including some tough details about her relationship with my dad. I feel like I understand her better now, and she understands me too. I know there's still a long road ahead. My mum and George have a lot to work through, and it's uncertain whether their marriage will survive. There's still a lot of uncertainty about what will happen next year, whether we'll move back or if I'll change schools again. For now, though, I'm grateful to feel safe, healthy, and cared for. This experience has taught me a lot about standing up for myself and the importance of balance, including in diet. I've started reading more about real nutrition science, not fad diets, and I'm interested in potentially studying sports medicine or nutrition in college. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. I wouldn't have found the courage to speak up without you. If there's one thing I hope people take from my story, it's this. Trust your body and don't let anyone shame you for taking care of your basic needs. Health looks different for everyone, and no single diet fits all. I probably won't post more updates unless something significant changes, but please know that your kindness and support have truly made a difference in my life. Thank you, Reddit.